I'm Joe Lample. When I created Growing a Greener World, I had one goal: to tell stories of everyday people, innovators, entrepreneurs, forward-thinking leaders who are all, in ways both big and small, dedicated to organic gardening and farming, lightening our footprint, conserving vital resources, protecting natural habitats, making a tangible difference for us all. They're real, they're passionate, they're all around us. They're the game changers who are literally growing a greener world and inspiring the rest of us to do the same. Growing a greener world, it's more than a movement, it's our mission. Just about everybody has discovered the many benefits of growing fresh vegetables at home these days. But how many people do you know that are including fruit trees into their backyard buffet? Not many, right? But by not including fresh fruits into our homegrown harvest, we're missing a huge opportunity. Store-bought fruit just doesn't compare in taste, selection, or nutritional value. And yet some people have been in tune with the many benefits of backyard orchards for generations. And one company has been in touch with a nation of customers for almost 200 years with a simple mission: inspire homeowners to discover the joys of growing fruit in their own backyard orchard. Stark Brothers Nursery, located just about an hour north of St. Louis, Missouri, has served their growing family of customers for years. And part of their success has to be because of their Chief Production Officer, Elmer Kidd. When it comes to knowing a thing or two about growing fruit trees, they don't get much smarter. He's been with the company for nearly 45 years, and over that time, Elmer's participated in the growing of over 65 million trees. Elmer, just the guy I want to see. Okay, so our viewers always have a lot of questions when it comes to fruit trees, sort of what to look for and what to look out for when they're in the garden center. And I'd like to go over some of those points with you, maybe the three top. And let's start with what you have right here. Now, this is a bare root tree, and this is the potted version. That's usually the two primary choices that you have. Let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of each.
The advantages of the potted tree is it's larger, better established, it has a root ball, it'll be easy to transplant, and you'll see fruit sooner.
Okay, like when? The first year maybe?
Possibly the first year.
Okay, perfect. What about the disadvantages?
Well, the disadvantages are the root ball still has to grow out into the surrounding soil about it, and you could actually buy a diseased tree by buying one with fire blight.
Okay, now I definitely don't want that. How am I going to know? If I'm in the garden center, can I avoid this by identifying the problem?
Sure. A tree with fire blight will have a blackened tip on the vegetative growth, or the blossom will be drooped and brown.
So basically it looks singed then?
Correct.
Okay, let's talk about the bare root and the advantages of these.
Well, the advantage of the bare root tree is it's purchased in the same year it was harvested. So when you get the tree, it'll be dormant.
Okay, so why is that important to me?
Well, the tree's asleep and it's going to wake up with nature. And it won't bring any disease issues into the first year.
Very important there. What about price?
Price, it'll be cheaper, somewhat cheaper than the potted tree.
And the varieties, more?
You'll have a bigger selection.
Okay, what about the fruiting time? You know, that's really important to me.
It's usually between 3 and 5 years.
Okay, so 3 and 5 years to this, potentially the first year there, but this is cheaper with maybe more varieties.
Correct.
I have some decisions to make. Okay. Elmer, you're in the business of growing out these amazing fruit trees to sell to the nurseries and garden centers and ultimately the home gardener, of course, which I am one, but convince me why I need to maybe start adding some of these fruit trees to my garden.
Joe, the answer is quality. A lot of the varieties in the store, one of the main causes is because of its shelf life. It'll keep a long time. You have a lot greater selection of what you can plant in your backyard.
Yep.
And the other thing, anyone that's ever eaten a hydroponically grown tomato or a tomato from the store versus a tomato that they grew in their garden knows the difference between fresh fruit and fruit that's been stored.
Yep, it's all about the taste, right?
It's all about the taste.
So the comparison is just like a homegrown tomato, there's no comparison to that fruit that you're growing in your backyard as well versus what you buy in a store.
The very same thing exists.
Got it. Now when it comes to choosing how many and which trees to buy, keep in mind that most fruit trees are not self-pollinating, which means you'll need another variety from the same species or family that blooms at the same time. But how do you know which varieties make good pollinating companions? Well, for that, you need to do your research ahead of time before you get to the nursery or hit the buy button on your online order. But most reputable nurseries are going to have somebody there to help you with that, or at least make that information available. But it never hurts to do your homework first. Now when you start shopping for your fruit trees, one of the first things you might notice is the bulge at the base of the tree, and you might think that's a problem, so you look around to try to find one that doesn't have it, and they all have it, but it's okay. It's known as the grafting union, where two varieties of trees are grafted together. And you might not realize that most fruit trees don't come back true from seed, so they need to be asexually propagated, and the most common way to do that is through grafting. Now there are a number of advantages to grafting, but the cool thing is you can take the top growth of the variety you're trying to reproduce, it's known as the scion, and you insert it into the understock or the rootstock. Now that does a number of things, but one of the primary things of the understock, it controls the mature size of the tree. So now we can get the variety of the trees that we love on the sizes that we need, all thanks to grafting. Okay, now that we have all the information we need to pick out the best fruit trees possible, it only makes sense to get some of those in the ground, right? So we're here in the backyard of Jamie. Now she's a young organic vegetable gardener and she doesn't have any fruit trees yet, but that's about to change. We're gonna meet Jamie and walk the site, pick out the best location for these trees, and of course get them in the ground and off to the best start possible. Hey Jamie.
Hi Joe.
How are you?
Doing good.
Good. I love your enthusiasm. You show up ready to dig with your shovel.
I'm ready.
First things first, we need to do a little assessment of your property, but I gotta tell you, I'm impressed with your garden. You have all the great spinach there, and you even covered up your potatoes from last night's frost.
I did.
And they look great.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a question for you, first of all. You don't have any fruit trees, and yet you have a great garden. Why no fruit trees?
Just was afraid to dive into the fruit trees. Just don't know anything about them and just really wasn't ready to take that on.
Yeah, well, guess what? You're gonna love what we do, and it's no problem at all, and it's gonna be a great addition to what you have here already.
Great.
So what I'd like to do first, though, is walk your property and just get a lay of the land and figure out where north is, because that will help us a lot, and where we decide to place our trees.
Okay.
Okay. So we've got the perfect place for your tree, the northwest corner of your property, and the variety of the tree is an Asian pear. So you get your pear and you get a disease-resistant variety that's not going to get too big or too wide.
Very good.
So let's get to it. If you'll move that tree off of the plastic, I'll use the plastic to get the soil on it.
Okay.
I think that's got it. Jamie, I think it's time to plant the tree.
Okay.
So if you'll grab the tree and move the paper off of there, I'll show you where we want to place this into the hole.
Okay.
And by the way, that's just a bare root dormant tree. It's not dead, it's going to leaf out beautifully, and you'll have fruit in about 2 to 3 years.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this knob right here, that's called the grafting union. You never, ever, ever want this to be below grade when you backfill, so that always wants to be above ground.
Okay.
The other thing here are these roots. They, of course, need to be below ground, but you see the main roots, but there's some smaller roots up here, but that all has to go underground. So the ideal place for this is somewhere between here and here. So I'd say right about there. So just hold that in place, and I'll backfill it.
All right.
We'll be ready to go. But this looks good because there's the grafting union. It's above the ground. We'll add some mulch, we'll water it in, and we'll do a final pruning for survival. I'll show you about that in a second.
Okay.
So let's go get the mulch.
Good.
Okay, so now a good rule of thumb, whenever you put mulch down, you want to keep about a 2-inch spread from the base of the tree out to the mulch. That's an area that could be a vector for pests and diseases. So by removing the mulch from that area, you kind of keep that area safer.
Okay.
Okay, so now just 2 more things to do. I need the tree guard, that white curly thing.
Okay.
And the pruners.
Got it.
Looks good.
Stick on it.
Now, you talked about not wanting to have a lot of maintenance and all of that. Well,
Right.
this is a great tool to kind of help protect your tree during the winter time. Fruit trees do have a susceptibility to certain cracking of the bark, and this will help prevent that.
Oh, okay.
So it's just nice to have it there.
Awesome.
Plus, if you guys weed whack, it'll protect it from that too. All right, pruning for survival. This tree has a central leader, but we want to go ahead and give it a final pruning to stimulate some new growth and just get it ready for the season.
Okay.
So on the central lead, we'll look for this bud right here. That's about the right height, and we'll give it a prune at about 45 degrees, like that.
All right.
Hold on to that.
Got it.
And the same thing for this one. We look for that outer bud right there. Prune it at 45 degrees, like that. Nice clean cut is important. And that looks good.
Awesome.
Now, do you feel like you could do this yourself? You've seen everything from start to finish? You feel confident?
I do. I can do it.
Good thing, because guess what? I brought you a present. This needs a pollinator buddy. It's a pear,
Okay.
so it needs another variety like it. And I brought you one,
All right.
but you get to plant it.
I can do it.
Okay, good. You have all the tools you need. Enjoy. Good luck.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Now about that pruning. Cutting off the branches from a tree you just planted might seem backwards, but it's essential for getting your tree off to a great start. In the second year, you're pruning for shape, and after that, it's shape and performance. But regular and strategic pruning is essential for the health and productivity of any fruit tree. Just ask Elmer, who definitely knows a thing or two about the importance of pruning.
One of the biggest failures that homeowners face is when they fail to prune their fruit trees.
Absolutely, but it's counterintuitive. They think they're going to hurt the tree.
Nothing could be farther from the truth.
All right, well, let's talk about why that is.
An unpruned tree sets up all the fruiting wood. It overbears, it has no vegetative wood. Eventually the tree just wears itself out, and the homeowner doesn't get any fruit that's fit to eat.
Yeah.
So he's much better off pruning it.
Let's show them how to do it.
Let's take some of these competitive branches out.
A good place to start for any pruning project is to remove the competitive branches, those that are close together and growing in the same direction. Then, look for inward growing branches. Remove all that you see to promote outward growth, while allowing as much light into the center of the tree as possible. And with any good pruning practice, other branches that should be removed are those which are crossing. Otherwise, over time, as the branches rub together, the bark can become exposed, opening up the tree to potential pest and disease issues. This is also a good time to cut back the length of certain branches or to encourage new growth in an outward direction. You can train the remaining branches to grow in a more open form with spacers. They're used to improve overall shape and allow more light and air into the tree. What about the shape and form on this tree? Because that's always important.
The shape and the form on a tree is important because it follows the tree all of its life. It determines how successful it's going to be.
And you always want it to get off to the right start.
That's correct.
All right, this tree looks pretty good to me. Anything you see on it?
I don't like this limb right here. It's a narrow crotch limb that's too tight, and also this limb is shading that limb. So I'm going to remove this limb.
And the result is a stronger tree off to a better start?
That is correct.
Very good. When you consider all the people you know growing vegetables in their backyard compared to those growing fruit, well, that number's likely a lot less. And if you took a poll, you'd get a number of reasons why growing fruit in the backyard just doesn't seem to be as popular of an option. Now, there are a few obvious issues, and the first is instant gratification. We know that we can put a vegetable plant or seed in the ground, and a few weeks later, we can enjoy the harvest. And then there's the issue with space. With a vegetable plot, we can enjoy a relatively large harvest in a pretty small area. But with fruit trees, well, now that's a different story, right? Well, yes and no. We're still talking trees here, but thanks to selective breeding and grafting, today we have the options for much smaller varieties that are perfectly suitable for the smallest backyard or large container. One of the biggest issues for not growing fruit trees at home is their reputation for being susceptible to pests and diseases. And yes, that's true, but there are ways to deal with the issues, and it shouldn't deter us from growing them. Now to start, keep in mind we're not growing our backyard fruit for commercial production, so does it really matter that we might have a few blemishes here? I mean, perfection is not a requirement, and trust me, a few cosmetic issues is likely not going to affect the taste at all. And like with all good horticultural practices, starting off with a healthy plant and disease-resistant, appropriately selected varieties for your growing region, properly sited and selectively pruned, can go a really long way to reducing or even eliminating many of the potential problems you might realize otherwise. Now, even the best laid plans don't eliminate all problems, and that's where being proactive when you see a problem is so important. Now, one of the most important things to know is to know your enemy, and for the larger four-legged pest, you'll likely need repellents or physical exclusion barriers. And smaller pests, well, most can be treated without the use of harsh chemicals, but it's always important to keep those plants as clean and healthy as possible, and again, choose resistant varieties whenever possible. But there's a lot of effective controls like horticultural oil and insecticidal soap, and biological controls like BT, and even natural methods like clay. But the bottom line is there are safe and effective methods for dealing with pests, and remember, perfection is not a requirement, and it's one of the best parts of growing it yourself. Now, another issue for some is the length of time it takes for trees to bear fruit. But as my father often said, anything worth having is worth waiting for. And that applies to fruit trees as well. Now, for trees that were started in a container, they'll bear fruit in about 1 to 2 years after planting. And even bare root trees will produce in about 3 to 5 years. And if it's any consolation, fruit trees are highly ornamental. So in addition to the edible value they provide, think about the value they provide to your landscape as well. Well, I hope today we've inspired you to try growing some fruit trees of your own or adding to the ones that you already have. But there's a lot of information out there and we've barely scratched the surface. But we have a lot of that information on our website, and you'll find it under the show notes for this episode. The website address is the same as our name. It's growingagreenerworld.com. We even have some specific links on how you can grow those trees in a more eco-friendly way. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Joe Lample, and we'll see you back here next time for more Growing a Greener World.